Welcome to the Touch MBA Admissions Podcast. Do you need help figuring out which schools to apply to or how to get into the world's top MBA programs? Hey, you're not alone. Join thousands of others on this podcast and on our site, touchmba.com, as they seek the admissions edge. And now, here's your host, Darren Joe.
Hey guys, this is Darren here. Welcome to the show. Glad to have you with us. I hope you guys are all doing great. Here at Touch MBA, what we do is help MBA applicants with school selection. We know this is such a difficult problem when you have so many options and you're trying to figure out the best way forward. So if you need school selection help, you can head over to touchmba.com, upload your profile there, and we'd be glad to help you out for free. We also interview admissions directors and students from top business schools around the world to help give you, a better idea of what they're really all about. And I think this week's episode is a really great example of that. I had Nick Barniville on the show. Nick helps run the MBA programs for ESMT based in Berlin, Germany. And we just had a really intimate conversation about this up-and-coming MBA program. This year, they had 66 students from 40 countries enrolled in the program, so a lot of diversity there. And after listening to this conversation with Nick, I think you'll really understand what ESMT is about, what culture they have and want to have at the program, and what they're looking for from candidates. And I think after listening to our conversation, you also understand the unique challenges admissions teams from top business schools face and how school administrators can really shape a program and the program experience for students. So I think this is a good listen to get an inside look onto how that whole process works, no matter what school you're applying to. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and let's get straight to it. I'm really excited to interview our next guest. I've known him for quite a while. Nick Barniville is the Associate Dean for Degree Programs at the European School of Management and Technology, or ESMT, where he has been since 2010. And Nick is responsible for the management of the full-time MBA program, the executive MBA program, the master's programs at ESMT. And before joining ESMT, Nick was the Director of MBA Programmes at Smurfit in Ireland, and he worked for Insead as well for a number of years. So I think it's great to have a Nick on the program because he's worked for a lot of top programs in Europe, and I just can't wait to learn more about ESMT. So Nick, thank you so much for your time, and welcome to the Touch MBA podcast.
Thank you, Darren. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I hopefully will be able to both inform and maybe even entertain your listeners with some news about ESMT Berlin and everything that's going on here.
Great. So the first question is, you've been at 3 top business schools in Europe. What makes the ESMT MBA unique from other top programs?
Yeah, I guess this is always the question to start with, isn't it? What makes anything unique? And it's a combination of factors that make ESMT unique and our MBA program unique rather than any one individual thing. So if you let me try to describe the package that you can't find in other business schools I've worked in, I'll try to do that briefly. I think the first thing is, as a business school, we were founded by business. So I think it's closeness to reality and closeness to business that sets us apart from many other business schools. So the school was founded in 2002 by 25 multinational companies. Most of them were German, but we also had some of the big consulting companies, the big international banking organizations, and lots of technology companies came together to form a business school in Germany. They felt that there was a problem in the German business school landscape, that there was no really internationally oriented program. Standalone business schools didn't really exist in those days. And, people from top German industry were looking at wondering why they had to send their people to Insead or to London Business School or across the pond over to Harvard or schools like that. They said, let's try to create something in Germany. So from the beginning, we've been extremely business relevant and very close to business. All our programs are extremely applied in their orientation. So we have a very strong project focus in our MBA program. Every participant has to go through a team-based consulting project, which is a couple of months. So it's not a specifically theoretical program. It's very, very applied, and we're looking for people who are able to work in an applied context. I'd say the most different thing I've found since coming to ESMT, and you mentioned, I spent 5 years working at Insead. I spent 4 years working in Dublin at a big public university. I think ESMT has a very, very particular culture, and it's a culture of intimacy. We're a small program, a relatively small school, I'd say highly intensive research-oriented faculty. But at the same time, it's a very, very intimate place. It's very informal. On our MBA program, we have a tremendous diversity. It's a small program, 65 people at the moment, but they come from 40 different countries. Everybody here is on a first name basis. Every door is always open. And it's just a non-bureaucratic school where everybody is on the same, speaking to each other, eye to eye, adult to adults. We don't really have this student-faculty sort of divide that you find in many business schools. Basically, we're all in this together. I think that fits very well with another unique factor of ESMT, which is Berlin. The culture of this city is very special at this moment in time. Who knows where we'll be in 10 or 15 years, but it's a brilliant place to actually spend a year. And what I always talk to candidates about is, instead of going straight to the what jobs do people get, or tell me the employment statistics. You got to also think about the journey. It's not all about the outcome, it's also the journey. And I think in terms of the cosmopolitan atmosphere, the excitement of Berlin, the cultural opportunities here, and I have to mention it, the affordability of the city for people who are on an MBA student budget. I haven't seen that elsewhere. I mean, you can actually do stuff on a student budget here that you can't do in many other places. So that's a few things that I think make us unique. I'll talk maybe a little bit later about the curricular side, because I think that's probably on your agenda at some stage. But let's start with that and see does that provoke any reaction with you, Darren?
Yeah, it certainly does. Me being really into startups, I've heard so much about Berlin being a hub for that. And I know that entrepreneurship is a focus of your school as well. I mean, is that something that you see being a core part of your program?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have, if you look at the industries that people who come to our program choose to work in afterwards, I mean, obviously the strongest industry is the whole technology area. And that's not necessarily startup. Our academic orientation is to teach people about the management of innovation and technology. And it's not only startup, but it's really helping people to understand how modern business creates sustainable competitive advantage through using technology and through integrating technology into everything they do. This also feeds into the second strong point of our program, which is sustainability, because we believe that Germany has a history of really sustainable business rather than short-term shareholder orientation. So we really, in our DNA, is really about how to use technology to create sustainable competitive advantage. This has now also morphed into an entrepreneurship focus at the school, probably more dragged along, I would say, by Berlin. I mean, I would say we did not lead the journey to entrepreneurship of our school, but we've been pulled there by the creative masses of Berlin. So we see huge demand, or we have seen huge demand from applicants for entrepreneurship exposure. And we've really had to change. We started off as a school founded by big companies. And now we're seeing 25-30% of our graduates wanting to start their own business. So we've started a few new centres here at ESMT over the past couple of years. Probably the biggest and most exciting is the German Tech Entrepreneurship Centre, which we call GTech. And there we have Startup Academy, we have a Startup Lab, we have open innovation sessions, we have talks, we have a speaker series, we have a lot going on. And they're also the people who are helping us to deliver our entrepreneurship courses on the program. So we have a core entrepreneurship module that everybody has to go through, a core business planning module. So I'd say, on the areas, so we're continuing to grow in the entrepreneurship area. But I'd still say our main focus is on overall, how do you use technology to keep ahead of the competition, and how does that lead to a more sustainable business?
It's really interesting that you mentioned these two focuses, managing innovation and technology and global sustainable business. I was wondering why, in particular, ESMT chose to focus on these two elective tracks.
I think it's really the DNA of the school. If you look at our founding companies, you take each one and you say, why are they so successful? The vast majority of the companies with whom we're involved with are successful because they can take technology from their R&D divisions and bring it to the market successfully and stay ahead of their competitors and continue to charge a premium price. So I think it's very natural for a business school that's based in Germany and that was founded by companies who have their headquarters mostly in Germany to have a focus on technology and the management of technology. And it's not to say that you need to be a computer programmer or some sort of high-powered engineer to come here. I mean, there's room for everybody in the technology-oriented industries. But I think it's really it's a niche that we have here as a country in Germany, which is very much reflected in everything we can do with everything we do on the academic side. I think sustainability for us is not just about keeping the environment clean. Sustainability is about long-termism of corporate decisions. And I think also the culture of Germany, where there is something which is a very long word in German called Mitbestimmungsrecht, that allows workers' participation in corporate decisions in large companies. So any company that has more than 250 people in Germany has to have a workers' representative on the board. So you can see that there's a consensus orientation in German corporate decision making that allows the longer term interests of the company as a whole and all its stakeholders to be considered, rather than necessarily only the shorter term interests of shareholders. So I think in terms of sustainability, we're embedded in a culture that puts sustainability, that puts a very high worth on having sustainable business. Having said that, also, Germany is also one of the countries that has the strongest environmental protection laws. So we need to understand a little bit how companies can introduce new technologies to enable them to be environmentally sustainable. And it's basically, it really fits with where we are, and it fits with the type of people we have working here, that those two areas are our major academic strong points, I would say. So interesting. And I also saw that you guys mentioned that 50% of the MBA experience is in the classroom, and that 50% of the experience is also focused on personal development. Could you talk more about what that means for ESMT students? Yeah. So we have, in addition to the typical classroom experience, we have a very applied project orientation on our program. So you're constantly getting involved in projects which are outside the classroom. Now, whether that be through our longer consulting project where you're working on a team and a real problem with a company, maybe getting new experience in an area in which you want to work a little bit later. But also, we have a very strong personal development program, which is separate from the academic sessions. If you imagine yourself as a student coming in from wherever, let's say you're sitting in Vietnam, Darren. So let's say there's a student sitting in Vietnam who says, okay, how am I going to be able to navigate this MBA journey? How am I going to make sense of all this material that's coming at me? And what am I supposed to do with it? I have my own dreams and ambitions, and I'm just not sure how everything in the classroom is going to relate to me personally. So I think our program is relatively small. We have a class size at the moment of 65 people from 40 different countries. Everybody is going to be coming from a very different background and really will relate to the material that we're working with in a very different way. So everybody is assigned an individual coach. And that coach, the aim of the coach is to help the person who's studying on the MBA to make sense of what they're learning in the context of their own goals. So we will really help you to understand what it is that's likely to make you a happy person after the MBA in terms of your next career move. And that's not only about salary. It's about, your appetite for risk. It's about your desire for coaching and mentoring. It's about your own personal value set. What do you want from your next particular role? And then we work with you on okay, what is your own experience? What are the gaps that maybe you need to try to get rid of to be able to be successful in your application for those particular roles that you think are likely to make you content in your career after the MBA? So we spend a lot of time with one-on-one coaching and one-on-one counselling, also through our career management service. And I think, it's being a small program, we can do that. It's a pretty expensive exercise for us to have such an individual focus. But I think that sort of sets us apart from many other schools. It's probably more common in the executive MBA space, actually. But we have it in our full-time MBA program as well.
Yeah, I mean, I also noticed that the average age of your participants is a bit older than most other MBA programs. And I'm wondering if that's an important criteria for you, that the applicants have a bit more work experience?
Let's put it this way. That's not necessarily by design. I think we're an extremely open group of people. Most of us have worked in other business schools. Some of us, the academic dean of our degree programs came from London Business School. I was in Insead. The head of career services was in Rotterdam School of Management. Our head of marketing was in HEC in Paris, et cetera, et cetera. And some other people came to us from IMD. And we're a group of people who've seen very rules-based organizations, in particular with respect to admissions. Really our admissions process is very much, what do you want from us? And is that something we think we can deliver? If you're in the classroom with me as a fellow student, will I understand what you have to contribute to my experience? If you start the program, how likely are you to complete it? So academic success, how likely are you to finish the program? And then average age is really not relevant to those to those criteria that we look for in admissions. It just so happens that we take people on our program who are in their early 40s. We don't have a problem with that, where other schools will say, okay, our MBA program is open to people until between the ages of 28 and 35. So our range is huge. We have a minimum of 3 years professional experience. So anybody coming in at age 25 would want to have pretty good experience, and everybody would need to understand what that person is doing in the classroom. But there are some exceptional people who are 25. The average age in our program is 31, but the range would be, say, 25 to early 40s probably. And that probably gives us a higher average age, a higher average professional experience. The median is probably 30 as an age, but honestly, we're completely open to younger applicants, older applicants. We think that we ask our students as well. We think that a mix is really good, because I think as long as everybody understands that what they're getting into, I think it's basically mirrors more the workplace, where you don't have this homogenous group of people who are all within a 3-year age span of one another. I mean, I think that's a bit ridiculous, really, to expect that that's going to be reflected in the job market afterwards.
I was also wondering, how MBAs are viewed in the job market in Germany, because it's a pretty recent phenomenon, right? The MBA degree in Germany.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid question, and it's MBA as a concept is growing, but it's still not at the same level as it would in terms of recognition of an MBA in the UK or in the US, for example. I think where we're finding really, really strong success with our MBA graduates is with international companies operating in Germany. So if you look at our top recruiters, we have Microsoft, we have Amazon, we have other tech companies, here, which is a mapping division of Nokia, which was recently bought by Audi, Daimler and BMW. They're kind of tech companies, but they're operating in an international environment and they're competing for international talent. They're the people who really know what an MBA is, because they've got international exposure and international operations, where the MBA is slightly less recognized. Although I would say growing is in the really big, small and medium-sized enterprise sector in Germany, which makes up about 80% of the German economy. And really where they have a tremendous need for talent is also for people who understand technology and are willing to work in international business development functions, because that's really, Germany's an export-driven economy. So they're open to people who've got maybe more specific sectoral experience, whereas the big international players are now seeing Germany as a source of top MBA graduates, both for Germany and for Europe in general.
Just a few more questions on the program side of things. Are there any exciting new developments coming up, and how does the school plan to evolve?
We're evolving constantly. We're still quite a young school. So I think what we're looking to do on the MBA side is to continue to become more selective. We're not looking at a second cohort at the moment. So we're looking at having a small program, but continuing to increase the caliber of people on the program. So probably steady state for our MBA program is about 75 people. We are looking to grow in the master's area, so to introduce more pre-experienced master's programs, because that's really where we see tremendous demand in terms of growth worldwide for people coming directly from bachelor's education. But I think we're always going to be a school that really tries to bridge the world of technology and management. We've recently opened some fantastic new research centres here. So I mentioned earlier the GTech, the German Tech Entrepreneurship Centre. We've also opened something called the Digital Society Institute, where we're working on issues of digitalization and privacy with a number of corporates who have come together to support research positions in the area of digital security in particular. So we have a cybersecurity center, which is quite unusual for a business school. We're also looking at new centers in the area of entrepreneurial finance. So different things that are linked maybe to startup scene, but not necessarily completely generic. So I think we're all about marrying new technology with management. I think one of the challenges that business is facing at the moment is in particular in the area of digitalization, and I think that ESMT is pretty well positioned to address those challenges given where we sit on the technology landscape.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. And for our listeners who may never have the chance to visit Berlin, I was wondering, is there anything else MBA applicants should know about this city and studying there? Okay, so I've been in Berlin I'm in my 7th year now, and I've also lived in 10 different countries, and I can safely say that it certainly won't be the city. It won't be the city's fault if I ever move. It's a fantastic place to live. It's really, really open to different cultures. It's extremely safe. It's very affordable. You can get everything and you can participate in anything, but you never have the feeling of missing out because it's not a frenzied city. Pace of life is it's relatively slow, but there's everything going on. So it's just a very, very easy place to live. And there's just some fantastic things to see, fantastic people to observe. It's a melting pot of world society, of world cuisine. The winters are horribly cold, but the summers are beautiful. The people themselves, okay, so I think as an MBA student, what you'll find in Berlin is most of the people that you'll end up coming in contact with are from all over the world. I think Berliners themselves, once you get under the skin, they're fantastic people, but they do look a little bit grumpy at first glance. So I think first couple of weeks, people maybe find the locals a little bit intimidating, but they're very direct, but they're also they're lovely people. And I think compared to the rest of Germany in particular, it's a very, very open society here, whereas maybe some other parts of Germany might be known for being a little bit more conservative. Yeah, I really want to visit. I haven't been out there yet, but it's definitely come and see us. Yeah, it's definitely a bucket list city for me. I've heard so much about it. I have to tell you briefly about our campus, because we were lucky enough to get the old headquarters of the East German government. So that before the fall of the wall, the East Berlin was the capital of East Germany, and the premier of East Germany used to have his office in what is now our campus. So we have the old headquarters of the East German State Council being preserved because it's a protected building. So now it's a mixture between a high-tech business school and a retro East German museum. Wow. So it's an absolutely amazing place to study. And I think some of the rankings organizations that look at facilities, if you look at The Economist, I think we've been number one for our campus facilities in the world for the past few years, which makes our facilities team very proud, because they're also extremely German in the way they manage the place. There are lots of things here that are protected that we can't touch, but it's an absolutely beautiful, beautiful building. Wow, to study in a historic building like that'd be super interesting. On the admissions side, we already discussed a few elements that you're looking for. Any other fit qualities that you're really looking for from applicants?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we have a couple of things that we particularly look for that may be not evident from reading our brochure. First of all, we look for a positive orientation in every touch point that we've had with you. So we really take into account the opinions of, for example, our admissions team, our marketing team, anybody who you've met, because what we want on our campus is people who are positively oriented, people who are constructive, people who can show through their actions that they have potential to influence other people in a positive way. And leadership potential for us is not only, the formal positions that might be evident from your CV, but it's actually how you behave. So I think behavioral factors in terms of all the touch points with us indicate to us more about your fit than anything else. The second thing we really look for in terms of fit are people who have taken some risk. Whether they've been successful or not, or they haven't been successful, people who haven't been comfortable with being comfortable. So I think the more you've actually put yourself out there and said, okay, I'm going to try something, whether it works or not, I think that shows a willingness to take some risk, which we really, really appreciate, and we're not judgmental about whether it's been successful or not. I think the third thing in terms of fit are people who are mature enough to treat the application process as an honest conversation. So, I think you have to be professional, obviously, but in terms of fit, it's people who can articulate what they want from us and why we might be a good place for them to study for their MBA. Not by reeling off some stock answers about what they think an admissions committee wants to hear, because nobody has a clue what we want to hear, apart from people listening to the podcast.
There you go.
We really want we want people to use the application process as a way for them to establish whether this is the right school for them. We don't want it to be seen as a hurdle that people need to get through. If there is a fit, if we're the right school for people and people are being honest with us, then we'll come to that conclusion together. And if we decide, okay, this is not a good fit, then nobody should feel that that's a negative. It just be maybe we don't do what the person is looking for. So we like people who can treat the whole application process as an honest conversation. And I think one of the questions you often ask is, what can applicants do to improve their chances of admissions? And really, I think the first thing is people should not apply too early. So they really should make sure that they have some experience that will be useful and valuable in terms of contributing to a class discussion. So if you're applying relatively young, make sure that the experience you have is going to be of interest to other people. Because the first question that everybody will ask is, why are you here? People learn so much from each other. It's what can you contribute from your experience, both personal and professional. And people want to hear stories from other people, and they don't want to say, okay, I've just about got the 3 years experience and I was sitting behind a desk and I was programming all the time and I never did anything else. That's not so exciting. So to improve your chances of admission, get some varied experience and also show how you've taken some risk. Second thing, obviously, prepare your application as well as possible in terms of your academic side. We're not, I think I said earlier, one of our application criteria is that we want people who are likely to academically get through our program. But, we do require the GMAT or the GRE, and we require pretty good scores on that. It's not our primary focus like many other schools, but we need your scores to be competitive on that. And you really need to show us why we are a good fit for you in terms of our culture. How have you shown positive orientation in terms of your engagement with previous employers, in terms of your engagement with your previous academic institutions, really what type of a person you are. And we kind of have a luxury because we have more applications than we have room for, like many good business schools. But we are so small that we want to make sure that we choose people that we would like to work with. And because it's such an individual school, we try to get the balance right between people that we actually want to spend time with and help them in their development, and people who are likely to be extremely successful afterwards. And it's up to us to try and find that particular balance.
It's so interesting that you mentioned you're looking for applicants who have taken some risk, that applicants who are not comfortable with being comfortable. I think that's the first time I've actually heard that on the podcast, and I've done a lot of these. I'm just wondering why that's important to you, to look for these sort of people, because generally I think a lot of people feel like they need to be pretty much have no blemishes when they apply to business school, right? To show that track record.
Not at all. Not at all. Blemishes are good. I think if you think, why do we do what we do? I think we really want to work with people who have the potential to do great things. And okay, they might not all be world changing, but some of them might be. And I think you're much more likely to get people who are going to achieve greatness if they've shown an appetite to try new things. If they're smart people who are not afraid to move out of their comfort zone, to try new things, to look at new ideas, to be open, to be curious, to be creative. And I think, those types of people are much more likely to enhance the reputation of our school and just to make our own lives more interesting as people who work at a business school. So, I think if we think, what are we in it for? We have a mission statement, which is educating entrepreneurial leaders who respect the individual and various things like that. But really, what's it about? It's about what can our part be in helping people to become the greatest that they can become. And it's probably more likely that people who have an appetite for risk and for a little bit of personal discomfort will be more likely to satisfy that. I want to give you one example of a program that we've put in place, which really demonstrates how this works. So we have something called our Responsible Leaders Fellowships. So people who graduate from our MBA program have the opportunity to go on 6-month volunteer placements in pretty tough places. And we'll provide the financing, we'll fly them out there, we'll give them a stipend, and they'll work using their MBA skills to enhance organizations that are working in pretty difficult contexts. So we've got, just a quick example, we've got 3 ladies in different places in Africa at the moment. We've an Indonesian lady who's working to help build waste management and recycling facilities in the second biggest city in Sierra Leone. She came to us from Jakarta. She volunteered for this program because she thought, I think I can do this. I think I can contribute to society by doing this. And it's a little bit of a risk for me, which we really encouraged her to take because we said, you're going to have so many new experiences. She's out in Bow City. She's coming back to us at the end of June. She said, having an amazing experience, but that's a risk taker. We have another lady who came from the finance industry who's now, she's from, I think, Shanghai or Beijing, I'm not sure, either one of those. She's now in Nairobi working with an organization called German Doctors, helping them to professionalize their operations. They provide slum treatment facilities for people in the biggest slum in Nairobi, and she's volunteering her time to do that. And we have about 15% of our MBA graduates are currently on these Responsible Leaders Fellowships, doing great things all over the world. And for us to attract the right type of candidate who's actually willing to do that, it just makes all of our jobs a little bit more worthwhile, to be honest.
I love that you guys are proactively looking for that trait, because I wish more business schools would do that. Yeah, that fellowship program sounds really amazing.
It's great. And, it's the thing about it is, half of the people who are on the fellowships have jobs already lined up for after when they come back. And the other half, they're going to have such great stories to talk about in interviews because, I think recruiters will look at people like that and say, okay, this person is a little bit different from the average. This person is a person who's willing to take risk and who's willing to give a little bit back. So, they can't by participating in things like that.
That's great. Just one more question on the admissions front, and that's with your interviews. Could you give our listeners any tips? I'm sure you've done a lot of them, perhaps yourself, on how they can really succeed in those interviews and have this honest conversation with you, but also make their case.
Yeah. Okay. This is a little bit difficult because I think I mentioned we've got quite an experienced team, and a lot of us have been doing this for a while. So everybody has their own style. So it's safe to say we don't work from a script. It entirely depends on who ends up being the interviewer. So I think the first thing that anybody going into an interview with ESMT needs to understand is that we want you to succeed. we want you to get into our program because it helps us if you get into our program as well. A little bit of being a little bit healthily nervous is fine, but we really encourage people to just focus on the fact that they are actually the customer. So it should not be a fearful event. It's somebody talking to an organization about which they're about to make a buying decision. So really, they need to understand. Okay, the person being interviewed needs to understand, what do they want out of the conversation? What do they need to know? I think so often in preparation for an interview, people don't have any questions. So 3/4 of the way through the interview. So there's, we go through the CV and we go through the life experience and we go through the motivation and we go through the general personality traits, and everybody does that a little bit differently. And then we say, okay, we've seen a lot from you. We've read a lot from you. What do you want to know about me, about the school, about my motivations, about anybody else's motivations, about the curriculum, about the employers, about the program, about the city? And it's amazing the amount of people who say, yeah, I've seen it all on the website. So I think for us, there are people who maybe haven't really thought about the conversation that they want to have. It's more about, how do I make myself look as good as possible? And the interview is not really about that, because anybody who gets invited to interview is already good enough to get into our program. You wouldn't be invited to interview if you didn't meet the criteria for the program. So I think we're looking for people with whom we can have an intelligent conversation, and that's probably the most important thing to bring to the interview.
That's great. Great advice. I also saw on the financing side of things for the programs, again, you guys are right now in 2016, 38,000 euros, which I think is a really, really great price. But I also noticed that you offer a lot of scholarships. Could you just tell us more about those sort of opportunities for applicants?
Okay, I have to say that as each year goes by, the number of scholarships we offer and the amounts we offer are decreasing. Yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate, but we have secured some external funding, so we're committed to having 10% of our participants from developing countries, and these are least developed countries as determined by the United Nations. So they're basically people who would not otherwise be able to afford their programs. So we have some pretty good scholarships and fellowships, really on a need basis for people who otherwise would not be able to attend a top business school. Then we have partial scholarships, merit-based scholarships. So really, what we need to understand is, what is your ability to afford the program yourself? What preparations you've made in terms of saving, in terms of your previous salary? What other options are available to you in terms of financing your program? Whether that might be, for example, for American applicants, we're registered for federal loan programs. For all other applicants pretty much around the world, you can take a loan out in Prodigy with Prodigy Finance. And we've a specific program which we're about to introduce for Germany. But we do have scholarship funding, which it's awarded on a combination of need and merit. We have a number of categories on our website. So anybody who's applying, I would encourage to apply for funding. And see what happens. Each person who's admitted to our program goes immediately after the admissions committee goes to a financial aid group. So the day after our admissions committee, they will already get an offer for our program, which details the amount of scholarship funding that we can make available. So there's no separate process to be done in terms of funding. What people can do to improve their chances of winning a scholarship, obviously, is to try to help us understand why they would be a dynamo in the classroom. Why we really need to have this person in the classroom. It's the most important thing. It's not, your GMAT score or your undergraduate score or how many years you worked in industry X or Y. It's really, why do we really want you? Why don't we want you to go somewhere else? So if you think of, you think of a candidate who's maybe applying to ESMT, to Mannheim Business School, to Insead, to maybe to Oxford. These are schools we compete with, and the candidate says, I'm applying to all these schools, and it's obvious to us that, they're also going to make some sort of a price decision. They're going to see, okay, all of these programs actually satisfy my hard criteria. Let's see how it goes. And I think once we need to get a sense of the competitive pressures that are on us as well. And I think that's the way everybody works, but maybe not everybody will actually say that there's a certain element of discretionary pricing involved from our side, depending on how much we want the candidate and how competitive the candidate is in terms of his or her overall application to other programs. It still helps in our industry if you're female. So how can applicants improve their chances of winning a scholarship? Well, I guess they can't do much about that, but it does help if you're a woman still, because we really would love to have 50% women on our program, but we're still not there.
You mentioned, in terms of what does merit mean, that's being a dynamo in the classroom. Does that also mean being dynamic outside the classroom as well?
Yeah, it does. So, people who have a history of creating things that bring other people along, influencing people in a positive way to challenge themselves. Absolutely. I mean, we want, and we have a very dynamic campus. It's a small campus, but it's very dynamic. We've a lot going on. So the more people can show where they have taken initiative and how they have really managed to actually create and develop new things, the more we want to have them around here, because we are. I think it was the Avis, the car company, whose slogan was "We try harder." We have to try harder. We're late in the game. We started in 2002. We don't have the 100 years of history, so we're entirely dependent almost entirely dependent on word of mouth of our program. So, and we know that we're not fully developed yet. So everybody who comes here is expected to contribute to the development of the school. Because we have to provide that fantastic experience. When we ask people at the end of the program, how happy are you with your decision to come to ESMT? Having a 4 out of 5 happiness is not enough for us. That's not good enough, because that's not going to help us to continue to build our brand, to climb the rankings, to get ourselves into clearly established in the top 5 in Europe, which is our ambition.
Yeah, but gosh, even though you guys started the MBA program, in 2006, you're already ranked by Financial Times and The Economist. That's super impressive. It's hard to get into those, to be highly ranked so quickly.
We were also the fastest school in history to get the triple accreditation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. We managed to get all that within 12 years of being founded. We got the last one we got was Equus.
Fantastic. Talking about careers for your graduates, first I want to just give you some kudos for putting up those career placement reports for the last 3 years. I just wish more schools did that. I think that's helpful for applicants. But from that career perspective, what makes ESMT special? Does the school, for example, have a lot of strong connections with the founding companies, or how else is ESMT unique there?
I think from a career perspective, the most interesting thing about the ESMT approach is that it's individual. I don't think any student should come here and say, there's a whole load of names on their website of companies who founded them, and it sounds like I might want to work for one of those. They're actually not our top recruiters, none of them. Our top recruiters are all from outside our founding companies, because I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's the international companies operating in Germany who tend to be the biggest MBA recruiters, followed by the number of people who are going into the Berlin startup community, who obviously weren't part of our founders network. But a lot of people want to stay in Berlin, so then they're pushed a little bit more towards the startup area. So our career service, it's one-on-one. We have a networking strategy where we try to help you figure out what you want to do, and then we try to put you in touch with the right people who can help you make happen what you want to happen. We're increasing the level of on-campus recruitment each year, but I was surprised. In one of my previous jobs, 80% of the people got their jobs through on-campus recruitment, and there were maybe 50, 60 companies coming on campus. And you just think, how can this be? How can 80% of a group of people want to work for the same subset of 50 or 60 companies? So we have a different strategy. We have a good corporate network. We're continuing to build it. We have a lot of connections. We're very, very close to our executive MBA alumni, who are very, very helpful in terms of putting people in touch with people in companies, particularly our founders network. But I think we're much broader than that network, and we wouldn't want people to say, okay, I want to work in BMW, so I'm going to go to ESMT, because BMW don't really hire MBAs. People need to know that there are some companies, you take Allianz, who's one of our founders, they hire lots of our graduates. They're happy to hire our graduates, but there are others who say MBAs don't have a place in our company. So I think you really need to have a discussion with our admissions team, our careers team, before deciding to come to ESMT, and really just clarify what is likely to happen and what is not. I think we're very, very strong in sending people into technology-oriented sectors. We're strong in consulting. We're strong in startup. We're strong in industry in general. I'd say where we're currently less strong than some of our competitors are, for example, if you want to go into investment banking. You'd say, I want to go into investment banking, so I'm going to study in Berlin, and then you put in an application. That's in your application. Then we'll say, have you thought about this really? Why is that likely to happen? Would you not be better off going to an area that's maybe a center for investment banking? Although, you learn all the skills in your program to do that, but maybe the connections might be better for a school based in London or based in New York.
No, and it sounds like you guys welcome prospects to contact you early on in the game, right? And to have these conversations with you. Back to your whole, having this honest conversation throughout the application process.
Absolutely. We have no interest in wasting anyone's time or pumping up statistics for any reason. We want people to understand what they're getting into as early as possible, so they can decide how much effort they want to put into the process.
I also saw that lots of your students at least talk to companies that they do the consulting projects for. Could you talk a bit more about those consulting projects that students do and how those potentially could lead to jobs as well?
Yeah, so every student who's on the MBA has to do a 2-month consulting project. It's a team-based consulting project. They can either source the projects themselves, or the vast majority of people take projects that we source from our own network. Those are projects which, they sort of simulate the type of projects that you would hire a McKinsey to do, or maybe some of the more technical ones you could hire some of the other consulting companies. They tend to come from both our own founders network, our alumni network. We have entrepreneurship projects coming from startups. We have projects with NGOs. So we charge a fee to companies. We don't charge social impact projects, and we charge entrepreneurs 10% of the normal project fee. Those projects are specific challenges that we craft together with the sponsoring organization. So they have a real need that they need solved by a group of MBA students. And they're coached through by our own faculty, who may be academic faculty, but who have a specialization in the area, but they may also be faculty from our executive education team, and we're the biggest provider of executive education at business school level in Germany. So we have a lot of experienced consultants who are working in our exec ed team. And so these projects happen towards the end of the program. It may be, although we can never promise it, that people who are working on these projects may get an offer from the companies. We'll have a conversation with the MBAs before they choose a particular project about what the likelihood is, or what the signals that have come from the company are about longer term engagement. Some of the projects are clearly specific, discrete tasks, which are really an opportunity for the MBAs to get to learn a new sector, a new industry, and to be able to then position themselves maybe for their applications to work in that particular area after the program.
And what's the visa policy for international postgraduate students in Germany? Can they stay for a while in Germany after the program?
They can, yeah. Germany has one of the most liberal postgraduate visa policies in the world. So you are allowed to stay looking for a job for 18 months. So during the looking for a job phase, you can work as a job seeker. You can work in anything to get to make some money. So you can take on project work. You can take on any sort of work you want. Then to actually get a longer term visa, You need to find a job. Again, you have 18 months to find this. You need to find a job which is commensurate with your degree. And for that, the German government has stipulated a salary which is just over 50% of the average MBA salary. So the reality is, if you get a job offer within 18 months, you can stay in Germany indefinitely. So it's much easier than, this is for non-EU, so it's much easier than for any other country. I mean, I think there are certain other countries which are pretty good. Denmark's pretty good as well. But Germany, I think, is very, very good, particularly compared to the UK or the US. It's way, way better and way easier. There is a little bit of bureaucracy, but there's no money that changes hands between companies. Don't have to sponsor people or pay money to the authorities to get a visa or anything like that. It's a process which actually works really well, and we have a lot of experience in facilitating that.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, 18 months. Wow, that's
Yeah, and look, if you found a job in Germany after 18 months, maybe you should think about looking somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. Is there anything else about the program that you just wish more candidates knew about when you're traveling the world and meeting prospects?
I wish people knew the people that work here. We're a very experienced bunch of people, but we're an honest group who really try to engage in an authentic way with everybody who comes through our doors. It's very, very difficult to get that message across because everybody thinks that you're a marketing man. But I think, if you look at the background of people who come here and are working on the programs, we've had experience in bigger organizations. We're a small organization. We take responsibility for everything we do, and we like to engage in an authentic way with everybody who comes through our doors. So I think the quality of the experience that you get is pretty intense, but it's a very, very enjoyable school to study at.
Well, I think we definitely got to feel that through this conversation. I really appreciate your candid thoughts and, of course, your time. Thank you so much, Nick, for being on the show.
Thank you very much, Darren. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your number one school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.